I just want to kick off this video of the last episode of Sonny Boy saying that I'm pretty convinced that while I don't make favorite anime lists anymore, I know what my favorites are in terms of like probably what could be considered a top 5, but I don't make top 10s, 25s, 50s because it changes so much, but I can recognize when something has impacted me enough that it is one of my favorites. And Sonny Boy has definitely ended up being one of my favorite stories in anime that I've personally experienced. And it's not going to be a show for everyone. Anytime you have a show that's not linear or the viewer's supposed to interpret it their own ways. Clearly the creator had an idea and a vision, but to dig deep of what that vision is, one may never truly know unless they reveal it in an interview. And I believe I've mentioned it in one of my prior Sonny Boy videos, how Angel's Egg is another one of my favorite stories. It's a near-silent film dealing with purgatory, life, and death, and the creator of Angel's Egg back in the 1980s, I believe is when it came out, basically said there's no way to interpret this, that every viewer's opinion is basically acceptable because they didn't make it with a specific story in mind. It's a kind of grab bag of ideas that everyone will have a different experience with. And I think Sonny Boy, to some extent, has a similar appeal to it. And like I said, I completely understand when shows like this aren't for everyone, especially aesthetically and narratively, but I think a story which I've come out appreciating as a story of adolescence and growing up, where characters go adrift, they deal with superpowers, they deal with the changing of their society, and eventually come back home to another reality where did anything really change at all, right? You know, characters who we thought were dead are now here, and what really was the purpose, I think, is a lot of people's questions probably coming out of this show. And to me, it's the idea of accepting the world and accepting yourself, finding the good in the bad, and pushing forward and knowing that your life is truly just getting started, even if the current situation is absolute hell, as it was for clearly a character like Nagara. Watching an episode that kicked off basically throwing up the question, was it all a dream? And I knew they weren't going to commit to that because, let's be honest, the first couple of times stories ever did that, it was all a dream twist. It was original, it was different, but it's a time and a place. And a show like this, if they would have said it was all a dream, I don't think that would have been acceptable. But, you know, to other people's credit, maybe that's the ending they want to interpret, and power to you, you have that right. But I knew something was going to be different, and when we saw them exit the shuttle, I think it was like minutes 8 or something in that nature, and we see the parting scenes with them attached and just running and seeing the most visual eye trip I think I've seen in anime in years. I don't even know what can compare to it with the distortion and the colors and the as if you're running through multiple realities. It was so blurry and disorienting. It was some of the best directing, I might even argue the best directing Sonny Boy has ever seen. And the music, holy shit, took my breath away. The first 2/3 of this show had almost no background music. And the last handful of episodes, episode by episode, have continued to knock my socks off. I think it's been the past 4 or 5 episodes that have just continued to drop background music. This episode had, without a doubt, more background music than dialogue half the time, and I absolutely loved it. That song where, honestly, the jams to it, I mean, there was some great guitar work, there was some great vocal work. It just really captured the atmospheric mood it needed to. Like when they were chasing their dream, going through these realities from what it looked like on a visual level, the song that played at that moment, and it lasted a good few minutes, easily my favorite song I heard in this entire show. And I think this is the moments where you want to use music more than dialogue, because there's no explanation that could satisfy a majority of Sonny Boy viewers on what the hell happened and what it all meant. So instead, play music and let your own imagination run wild and interpret it in the ways that you want to see. I think that's such a brilliant and bold choice, and honestly, if you were to ask me, or at the very least, show me this show before knowing anything about it, who the creators were, what studio was producing it, Mathis would not be on my list of who was producing this one. And I really hope that they're going more in risky directions. And what I mean by risky is projects like these, they're not commercial successes more often than not. They're not the types of shows you want to do. Whether you love these guys or hate them, from a business standpoint, if you had an anime studio, that's what you would want to adapt or create fresh, because that shit will sell like hotcakes. I think there's an isekai about a vending machine or something coming out eventually, right? Like, that shit just sells. A show about this, Sonny Boy, doesn't. But I would love to see more anime originals, or just stories that don't see the light of day get produced like this. I mean, even if the visuals weren't for me. Honestly, that was part of my issue with something like Ping Pong the Animation. I actually eventually did go back and watch it, and I liked the story, but visually just wasn't for me. But that's an example of, even if the aesthetic, for being as creative and different as it is, I still appreciated the narrative and characters behind it. I could have felt the same way with Sonny Boy. It just, for me personally, I love both the narrative and the open-endedness and the interpretation of it alongside the trippy ass visuals. I think the idea of just, finding yourself and finding your place after going on such an anime journey rather than breaking down what's God, breaking down what's the devil. Some characters just eventually ended up dead or leaving or disappeared, and our Central 2 or Central 3 ended up in a situation where they get to try again in their world and using the experience that they learned. And I know there's more intelligent people out there who can interpret, break down scene by scene, moment by moment, episode by episode better than I can for Sonny Boy. But that's not what this channel is about. This channel is about me watching the shows I love and breaking them down from my point of view. And I think that's what's made Sonny Boy one of the more interesting review series for me, because watching people go from no idea what I watched but very entertaining to I honestly don't like it. I don't see what people like about it, but power to you, to the amazing paragraphs that some people have left me, opening my own eyes in interpretations in ways I never would have been able to see myself. Sonny Boy is one of those shows that, rather than being, I think, a controversy in the anime community, like, if you were to talk shit about a Attack on Titan, a Demon Slayer of the season, you're probably going to get a lot of hate thrown at you. And I disagree with that happening, but that's just what would happen. If you were to say you love Sonny Boy and you said it was your anime of the year, or you came out saying it was your least favorite anime of the year, I think both sides could understand where the other side was coming from because of the way it's designed. And rather than being a controversy as if, there's this powerful opinion, I think if you asked and you threw a dart at a random anime fan, you'll have a different response. And as long as you dug into the response, because the natural response was didn't care for it, loved it, hated it, mediocre, right? But if you dug into their opinions of it and they actually broke it down, I highly doubt anyone would give you the same breakdown as the next person. And shows like these need to be promoted more. Now, Funimation is where I watched it. No idea if they have a planned BD release, but I would not only love to see the dub, I would love to purchase it. And I don't purchase a lot of anime because even if things get removed from streaming services, the internet still exists and I know how to sail the high seas. But there's certain shows that, even if I don't plan to rewatch them, which in the case of Sonny Boy, I absolutely do, but for the point, even if I had no plans to rewatch it, it's a show that I would want to own, so even 20 years from now, even if somehow I grew out of anime, which wouldn't happen, I could look back and say, that's why I loved it back then, or I wish I saw more of that. And maybe this will be the start of something new for the anime industry. Hard to say, but it's been a blast. It's been an absolute pleasure talking about this show, and I would love for the last time to know what people thought of either this final episode or the journey as a whole. Let me know down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.